The fire cracked like old bones, its flames rising into the darkened sky as the elders of the village leaned in, their faces drawn with age and stories too heavy to carry alone. Children gathered around them, eyes wide and restless, the night folding in closer with each passing moment. The air was thick with wood smoke and secrets. One of the oldest women, with silver streaks braided into her black hair, let her voice rise above the hush. Her tone was quiet but sharp enough to silence even the wind. "She once danced like the wind," she began, her fingers stirring the ash at her feet. So free, the earth begged to follow her steps. They said she was born with rhythm in her bones and fire in her feet. But no one protected her. Not her mother, long buried. Not her neighbors. Not even the gods who watched from above. The children leaned in closer. Behind them, the fire seemed to dim for just a moment, casting the woman's face in shadow. "She lived in that crooked house beyond the well," the elder continued, her voice lowering. "The one where the laughter stopped. The one where her stepfather waited for her every night, not with love, but with silence and shame. And when she danced, when she dared to dream, he saw it as defiance." One child asked, "What did he do?" A silence fell over the group, longer than any before. A cricket chirped once. The fire snapped again. "He broke her," the woman whispered. "He called her ungrateful. Called her cursed. And when she danced at the moon festival, despite his warning, he waited with a pestle meant for pounding yam. He didn't stop until she couldn't stand. Until her legs bent in ways no legs should bend." Gasps escaped tiny mouths. Some covered their ears. But the elder pressed on. "She lay there in the goat shed, flies on her skin, fever in her mind. The village heard her cries. No one came. Not even me." Across the fire, another elder closed her eyes. "But she didn't die," the first woman said. "No. That would have been mercy." Her voice turned to a whisper, and the flames seemed to dance with her words. "They say she crawled through the night. Past the thorn fields. Past the river. Dragging her shattered legs behind her like broken wings. They say the soil burned under her hands. That her blood fed the spirits sleeping in the old shrine at the edge of the world. She should have died there. But instead, something else happened." She paused. The wind shifted, and the shadows of the fire stretched long and thin. No one knows what she saw. But when she rose, even the spirits bowed. The children were still. The fire gave one last sharp crack, shooting sparks into the sky like shooting stars. One child turned to look over her shoulder, as if expecting to see someone crawling out of the dark. And now, the old woman finished, eyes gleaming. "Every time the drums beat, if you listen closely, you'll hear footsteps that don't belong. A limp in the rhythm. A hiss in the fire. That's her. Still dancing. Still burning." She leaned back, the story complete, but her hands trembled. No one clapped. No one laughed. The fire, for just a breath of time, flickered low, as if remembering the girl who had once danced like the wind. And what she became when the wind turned to fire. They called her Ebel, which meant mercy, though life had shown her little of it. At 17, she was already a creature of wonder in the village, slender and sun-darkened. Her movements carried the grace of falling rain and the joy of thunderclaps. When she danced, her ankles moved like they remembered older rhythms, ones buried beneath time. Her laughter, sharp, light, and full, could break the tension of 100 silences. Even the trees, some said, leaned forward when she spun. She danced for everything, to greet the rain, to grieve the dead, to welcome the morning sun. She danced with barefoot joy in dusty courtyards, in harvested fields, beside shallow streams. The old women smiled. The children clapped. Even the chickens paused, blinking at her rhythms. But not all eyes watched with warmth. Behind the cracked walls of her home, the air was heavy with rot and silence. Her stepfather, Okafor, was a man of short words and long shadows. Thick-necked and broad-shouldered, he walked with the weight of bitterness on his back and anger in his fists. The day Ebel's mother died, fevered and cold, barely breathing her daughter's name, something dark settled over him. He stopped calling Ebel child. He stopped looking at her face. And he started counting his drink more than his blessings. Their home was crooked, patched together from forgotten wood and rusting nails. Okafor slept in the main room, always near the door, always with a bottle near his feet. Ebel slept in the corner, near the broken window, curled like a ribbon. The floor creaked when she breathed. The walls flinched when he growled. Dancing brings spirits, he told her once, his voice slurred and thick. And spirits bring ruin. That's what killed your mother. Don't bring it into my house. But she couldn't stop. Dancing was the only thing that made her feel alive. So she danced when he wasn't watching. In the garden when the birds were louder than her footsteps. Behind the trees while washing clothes. And at night, especially on those full moon nights, she went where no one else dared. The whispering rocks stood at the edge of the village like crooked teeth jutting from the earth. 5 massive boulders, each taller than a man, curved inward like they were huddling in council. The elders said they were sacred. That the ancestors spoke through them when the veil was thin. That some nights, if you placed your ear to the stone, you could hear the voices of the dead. Warnings. Whispers. Songs. Ebel went anyway. She would wrap her shawl around her waist, twist her braids into a knot, and slip out through the back door barefoot. The grass remembered her steps. The air cleared before her. At the rocks, under the moonlight, she moved. Not like a girl. Like a storm. Like a drumbeat made flesh. Each twist of her hips echoed through the trees. Each stomp of her heel seemed to call something deeper from the ground. She never saw spirits. But sometimes she felt the stones tremble. Just slightly. Just enough. Once, as she twirled in a wide circle, her foot brushed something cold, not a snake, not a root. A hollow space beneath her. The earth shifted, and her heart skipped. She paused, lowered herself, and placed her palm flat against the rock nearest her. It hummed beneath her skin like a sleeping heart. She didn't tell anyone. During the day, she became another Ebel. Obedient, quiet. She helped the old women pound yam. She swept the square. She fetched water from the well. But her eyes were always elsewhere, her feet always shifting under her skirt. The girls her age whispered about marriage, babies, and boys. Ebel whispered to the wind. One afternoon, after a small harvest dance, the village elder told her, "You carry thunder in your blood, child. You must be careful where you strike." Ebel smiled politely, but her heart fluttered. She didn't want to strike. She wanted to soar. She wanted more than the narrowness of her world. More than the bruises she learned to hide. More than the way Okafor's voice tightened when her name passed his lips. One evening, he caught her coming in too late. Her shawl was damp with sweat. Her feet stained red from dust. He didn't speak. Just watched her cross the room in silence. The next morning, her drum was missing. And her shawl had been torn in two. She said nothing. But the next night, she returned to the Whispering Rocks anyway. Because what else did she have? No mother. No safety. No future except the one she carved with her own feet into the earth. So she danced again. And the earth listened again. And beneath her, something ancient stirred. Not to stop her. Not yet. But to wait. The drums arrived with the wind, deep and rolling, like thunder made by men. The travelers came just after dusk, tall, dark-skinned drummers with painted faces and calloused hands. Their caravan stopped at the edge of the village with bundles of hides, gourds of palm wine, and stories stitched into their songs. Villagers gathered quickly, drawn by the rhythm that made even the trees sway. Ebel was among them. Eyes wide, feet itching. She'd heard their kind only once before, years ago, when she was still small enough to ride on her mother's back. That night had smelled of roasted cassava and palm oil and joy. This night smelled like smoke. But the drums called her anyway. The fire in the square was roaring. The travelers formed a wide circle and began to beat their gems in Bugaribus with fierce, joyful urgency. Children squealed. Old men tapped their canes. Girls spun like ribbons. And Ebel, she danced. Not like the village girls. Not like the shy, swaying rhythm of wedding festivals or harvest chants. She danced like she was trying to tear open the sky. Her arms sliced through the air. Her feet slammed the earth in perfect, wild defiance. The fire caught the glint in her eyes, and for a moment, it seemed like she wasn't Ebel at all, but a flame given flesh. Gasps escaped from the crowd. Some cheered. Some stared. And behind them, in the dark, Okafor watched. He had followed her, half drunk, the bottle still in his hand, swaying in his shadow. His jaw clenched as the villagers clapped. As they smiled. As they forgot what he had told them. His voice didn't rise that night. He said nothing. He simply stepped out of the dark and grabbed her wrist like a trap snapping shut. The drummers faltered. The rhythm broke. The fire flickered. Ebel's breath caught. "Come home," he said, not a shout, not a plea, just an order. She hesitated only a second. Long enough. His palm cracked against her cheek. No one stopped him. Not the elders. Not the women. Not even the drummers whose rhythms had unlocked her soul. The silence was louder than any beat. She staggered, then followed him, one hand on her face, the other still pulsing with rhythm. When they reached the house, he didn't wait. He slammed the door shut behind them and bolted it. Shadows twisted on the walls. His breath reeked of fermented hate. "You think you're some kind of queen now?" he snarled. "Dancing like a whore in front of the village?" She said nothing. "You shame me." Still silence. He threw the bottle at the wall. It shattered, a spray of glass and fire. Then he grabbed the iron chain from the hearth, the one used to bind the goat during storms, and wrapped it around her wrist before she could scream. "You want to use your legs?" he hissed. "Let's see how long they last." She kicked, scratched, spat. But he was heavier, stronger, and too far gone. He dragged her into the corner like a sack of yam. Pulled the pestle from the cooking pot, thick, wooden, stained. The first crack didn't sound real. The second made her scream. The third turned the scream into something worse, a raw, wet sound that no human throat should make. Outside, dogs barked. Inside, her world exploded. He broke her right leg at the thigh. Then her left at the knee. Then again near the ankle. He didn't stop until her body shook in silence, her mouth open, but no sound escaping. Her hands trembled like dying birds. Her eyes stared, wide and glassy. When it was over, he dropped the pestle beside her and stumbled back, chest heaving, sweat running down his face like fever. He didn't look at her again. He didn't bind the wounds. He just kicked open the back door and dragged her limp body into the goat shed. There, among the straw and rusted tools, he dropped her like waste. "You like dancing so much," he muttered, "then dance your way out of this." He locked the shed door. And walked away. Ebel lay on her side, the smell of old dung in her nose, blood pooling beneath her. Her legs were twisted, useless. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She tried to scream again, but her voice had gone. Left her like everything else. Hours passed. Then days. No one came. The village heard, of course. The screams had been too loud, too sharp to ignore. The firelight had flickered with them. Some muttered prayers. Some shook their heads. But none knocked on the door. None dared anger Okafor. Only the wind visited her. Cold, dry, carrying dust and whispers. And one night, while flies circled her wounds and rats sniffed at her feet, something beneath the earth shifted. It was small at first. Like the stirring of roots. A tremble so faint it could be imagined. But Ebel felt it. A hum inside the soil. A voice without sound. A presence watching her from below. Not pitying. Not mourning. Waiting. Her hand, numb and cracked, slid slowly across the dirt floor. She reached toward the far corner of the shed, where the earth seemed darkest. Where her blood had dripped the most. And though her bones were shattered, though her breath was thin, though her voice had left her, she moved. Just slightly. Just enough. And the thing beneath the soil moved, too. Ndidi found her on the 5th day. She hadn't meant to go near the goat shed. No one did. Rumor said Okafor kept spirits in there. Others claimed it was cursed ground, that strange sounds came from it at night, scratching, whispering, a breath just beneath the wind. But something drew her there. A heaviness in her chest. A pulling in her ribs. The kind of feeling her grandmother once told her never to ignore. She crept toward the shed just as the sun began to drop, dusk bleeding orange over the fields. The door creaked open beneath her fingers. The smell hit her first, rot, blood, fear. And then she saw her. Ebel. Curled in the straw like a broken doll, legs mangled, lips cracked, eyes half-lidded but still burning faintly. Ndidi dropped to her knees. Ebel? Ebel, it's me, Ndidi. I'm here. There was no answer, only a dry rasp, barely a sound. But her fingers twitched. That was enough. Ndidi didn't scream. She didn't run. She did what she was taught. She pulled her friend gently into her arms, wrapped her in her shawl, and waited until nightfall. When the streets were silent, she snuck her out through the back alleyways like a thief carrying treasure. She hid Ebel in the old medicine hut behind her grandmother's house. Her grandmother had been a healer, midwife, and whisperer of bones. When she died, few dared enter her space again. But Ndidi knew every corner. Every herb. Every song. She washed Ebel with warm palm water. Crushed healing leaves and murmured names of old spirits as she wrapped her friend's ruined legs with cloth soaked in potash and moonflower oil. Every day, she changed the wrappings. Every night, she sat beside her and whispered stories of women who had survived worse. But Ebel barely blinked. She barely breathed. She had gone somewhere else. Not asleep. Not gone. Somewhere deeper. Because at night, she began to hear them. Voices. Not Ndidi's. Not her own. They came from the corners. From the floor. From the air itself. Soft at first, like wind through grass. Then clearer. Whispers that didn't use words, only rhythm. And always the same question, over and over, threaded through the silence like a drumbeat in her blood. Are you ready? Ebel would lie there, staring at the ceiling beams, unable to move, the pain still thick and gnawing. And she would listen. The whispers never told her what waited. Only that something did. One night, while Ndidi slept at the door, Ebel pulled herself from the mat. It took all her strength. She bit down on her sleeve to keep from crying out as she dragged herself across the floor, arms trembling, hands slick with sweat. She made it out the door, past the broken fence, across the dirt path that cut through the village. She didn't stop. Her legs dragged behind her like dead branches. Her breath came in gasps. The world blurred, but the rocks called to her. She reached the edge of the whispering rocks just before moonrise. The stones stood tall and silent, 5 shadows hunched in the dark. Ebel collapsed at their base. The earth felt warm beneath her. Wet. Like breath. She placed her palm against the largest stone and closed her eyes. I can't walk, she whispered. But I'm still here. Silence. Then wind. Then, footsteps. Not behind her. In front. She lifted her head. A woman stood there. Dressed in white. Not white like cloth. White like smoke. Like bone. Like lightning caught in skin. Her feet hovered just above the ground. Her face was ageless. Eyes deep and unreadable. Ebel's heart stopped. The woman said nothing for a long time. Then, in a voice like rain over firewood, she spoke. "You should be dead." Ebel blinked, tears streaking her dirt-streaked cheeks. "I was. Almost." The spirit knelt beside her. Her hand brushed Ebel's forehead, cold and hot at once. "Dancers die," the spirit said. Her fingers traced down to Ebel's legs. "But those who crawl through fire." She looked at her. "May rise with thunder." The words echoed through the stones, into the soil, into the girl's broken bones. Ebel trembled. "I don't understand." "You will." The spirit leaned closer. Her breath smelled of river water and ash. "There is a price. Not in blood. In memory. In truth. You will never dance the same. I can't dance at all. You will. But not with feet." The rocks behind them began to hum. The earth shivered. The spirit stood. "Say yes," she said. "Or crawl back and rot." Ebel, through her pain, through her fear, through the ache in every inch of her, raised her face to the night sky. She remembered her mother's voice. The taste of yam stew. The weight of Okafor's hand. And the silence of the villagers. Her voice came soft. "Yes." The spirit nodded once. And vanished. The wind died. The earth stilled. But Ebel's blood, for the first time in days, began to move. And it moved like thunder. The fever took her the next morning. Ndidi returned to the hut to find Ebel curled in the corner, shivering though the day was hot, her skin slick with sweat, her breath shallow and jagged. Her hands clawed at the earth as if trying to dig her way somewhere, or escape something only she could see. Ndidi called her name, but Ebel didn't answer. Her eyes rolled back. Her lips moved, whispering words no living tongue had taught her. The fever pulled her under. Darkness folded around her like cloth soaked in blood. Then sound. Low, pulsing, rhythmic. Not music, but something older. Not drums, but footsteps. Not footsteps, but heartbeats. She floated. Her body felt distant. Weightless. Unbroken. Above her stretched a sky of bone. Below her, a path made of ash. She was not alone. Figures walked beside her, faceless women, cloaked in smoke and silence. They glided, their bodies wrapped in tattered veils and beads that clicked like teeth. Ebel could feel them watching her, even without eyes. She tried to speak, but her tongue was heavy. They led her deeper. The path twisted through memories she didn't own, glimpses of other lives, other pain. A woman forced into a river and stoned by her kin. Another torn apart by her husband's brothers for bearing only daughters. Another burned with her own wedding dress. So many screams. So many names buried in silence. She cried out, but no sound came. The path ended before a wall, ancient, pulsing, alive. One of the women stepped forward and placed her palm against it. It split open like a wound. Ebel was pulled through. She fell into a chamber lit by nothing but memory. The air smelled of charred flesh and wet stone. The walls pulsed faintly, breathing like skin. Bones littered the ground, not piled, but arranged in patterns. Ankles beside ankles. Ribs splayed like fans. Skulls stacked in rings. In the center, a perfect circle made of ash. She crawled toward it. Her legs dragged behind her, still broken, still useless. Blood smeared the floor. Her fingers trembled. From the shadows, voices rose. Not in anger. In invitation. She reached the edge of the ash. Something inside her, something deeper than muscle or bone, knew what came next. She pulled herself into the circle. The moment her hands touched the soot, the chamber groaned. The bones rattled. The spirits gathered, forming a wide ring. They stood silent, unmoving, watching. She began to move. Not with grace. Not with beauty. With pain. With rage. She scraped her body along the floor, dragging herself upright by sheer will. Her legs twisted beneath her like dying roots, but her arms spread wide. Her body swayed. Her back arched. She twirled, not with feet, but with her whole being. Every motion cost her blood. Every breath burned. But she danced. With dirt in her mouth. With tears on her chest. She danced for her mother. For the silence of the village. For the weight of Okafor's hand. For the way the world swallowed girls like her and left no name behind. She danced until the ash rose around her like smoke. Until the bones hummed. Until the shrine itself groaned. Then, silence. A stillness so complete it rang. And then, the shrine spoke. Its voice came from the stones, the dust, the marrow of every bone scattered across the floor. You are our vengeance now. The words wrapped around her like fire. Something snapped in her chest, not pain, but pressure, as if something inside her had cracked open. She gasped. Her legs twitched. Once. Then again. Then, she rose. Not fully. Not smoothly. But up. Onto her feet. No, not her feet. They were not as they once were. Her skin shimmered faintly, her veins glowing with faint white light. Her eyes reflected the glow of unseen stars. The bones beneath her flesh had shifted, fused, healed, but wrong. Not wrong. Remade. Reforged. The spirit women stepped forward, heads bowed. Their voices rose, soft and layered. She walks. She carries the broken. She remembers. She avenges. Ebel stood in the center of the ash circle, her arms still spread wide, her blood now dry, her body trembling. She was no longer a girl. No longer just Ebel. She was something else. Something the world had buried, and the earth had decided to raise again. She stepped forward. The bones cleared her path. The ash circled her like a storm. Behind her, the shrine sealed itself, as if it had never opened at all. And inside her, for the first time since her legs were shattered, there was no pain. Only purpose. The rain began the night Ebel walked out of the bush barefoot, wrapped in a torn white cloth that clung to her skin like mist. No one saw her arrive. The gates were closed. The village slept. But the wind shifted when she crossed the threshold. The dogs howled. The baobab trees creaked. Somewhere, a baby woke and would not stop crying. And then, the rain fell. Not a drizzle. A flood from the heavens. The kind of rain that made roofs sag and fires hiss. It pounded the earth like a warning, like drumming hands slapping the ground from below. Day and night, it fell. 9 days. 9 unbroken days. On the third night, an old widow named Mama Joke claimed she woke to the sound of dancing on her roof, bare feet, limping and fast, moving in uneven rhythm across the wet thatch. She opened her window, but no one was there. Only the trail of muddy footprints down the side of the wall. By the fourth night, others heard it too. Feet in the dark. Whispers in the corners. Candles blown out by breathless winds. On the fifth day, children began to dream of a girl with broken legs who moved like water, her arms streaked with blood and moonlight. They cried in their sleep. Some screamed. One drew her in the sand, eyes glowing, body bent, mouth wide in a scream that looked like song. The elders gathered. Something was wrong, they said. Something had returned. Something old. They blamed the drummers. They blamed the wind. But no one blamed Okafor, not yet. In the shadows, Ebel moved unseen. She watched the ones who had turned away that night. The woman who had looked down as Okafor struck her. The man who pulled his son inside and closed the door. The priest who had said nothing. Ebel was learning to move again. Her body was foreign, no longer pain, but pressure. Each step felt like stepping into two worlds at once, one flesh, one smoke. Her limbs cracked when she bent. Her breath fogged even in heat. Her reflection shimmered when she passed still water. She was not healed. She was remade. And she remembered. The first elder she confronted was the butcher, Obi, who had once laughed and called her wild feet. She waited until nightfall, then stood behind his hut while he slaughtered a goat in the rain. When he turned and saw her, soaked, silent, eyes glowing faintly, he stumbled back, falling in the mud. She didn't speak. She only stepped forward once. The goat's blood ran into her footprints. Obi never spoke her name again. On the seventh day, she stood in the prayer hut and looked into the eyes of Elder Chika, who had seen her bleeding in the street once and crossed to the other side. "Why did you let him?" she asked. Her voice was not loud. But it carried. Chika's mouth moved, but no sound came. Ebel placed her palm on the altar. It smoked beneath her hand. "Answer me," she said. But he only wept. The rain didn't stop. By the eighth night, even the children went silent when thunder rolled. No one danced. No one lit a fire after sunset. The air was too thick. Too expectant. And still, no one knew it was her. Until Okafor saw her. It was at the well. He had come late, muttering, empty bottle in hand, grumbling that the rain had watered down his last jar of wine. He bent to draw water. And she was there. Sitting on the low stone edge like a ghost waiting to be remembered. He froze. His eyes narrowed. She didn't move. But her face, older now, sharper, paler, with eyes like dying stars, was unmistakable. His lips parted. "Ebel?" She didn't answer. He dropped the bottle. It shattered. "No. No. I buried you. You're dead." He staggered back, slipping in the mud. She stood slowly, like a shadow stretching. "I crawled," she said, her voice soft but hard as bone. "Through fire. Through blood. Through silence. But I was not dead." His breath came ragged. His eyes darted to the path. "I should have killed you. You tried." Lightning cracked across the sky. He turned and ran. But the rain followed him. And the footsteps behind him didn't sound like one person walking. They sounded like many. Like dozens. Like 1,000 broken girls rising from the soil to chase him. The villagers found him the next morning curled beneath the old fig tree, shaking, soaked to the bone, whispering her name like a curse in a prayer. They said he never walked upright again. The rain stopped the morning of the moon festival. As if the skies themselves had been holding their breath, waiting for something to pass. The clouds parted, revealing a strange, copper-tinged sun that turned every wet surface into flame. The village exhaled in cautious relief. Preparations began as they always had, banners hung, drums dusted, yams roasted in great mounds, palm wine flowing in thick brown calabashes. It was the only day the living danced without shame, barefoot and bold, thanking the gods for breath, harvest, and survival. But that year, everything felt tilted. The elders stood stiff-spined, their mouths smiling but their eyes scanning shadows. Children giggled less. Even the drummers tapped cautiously, as if unsure whether the rhythm was still theirs to command. Whispers had grown louder since the rains. Of dreams. Of ghosts. Of feet in the night. And of Okafor, now half-mad, rarely seen outside his home, muttering of a girl who walked like thunder and eyes that bled light. Still, tradition demanded celebration. So, at dusk, the great fire was lit in the center of the square, and villagers gathered around the sand circle where dancers would spin their thanks beneath the moon. Offerings were laid at the edges, beads, feathers, kola nuts, tiny carved drums. Then, she appeared. Not loudly. Not with fanfare. She simply stepped forward from the mist that drifted up from the earth, wrapped in a veil the color of ashen bone. White, not the white of weddings or mourning, but the white of things that once lived and now remembered. The circle quieted. Even the drummers stopped. The girl said nothing. She walked to the center with a calm that made the skin crawl. Her feet were bare. Her steps were strange, too heavy and too smooth at once, as if the ground was yielding beneath her. The elder responsible for the dances began to speak, but Okafor's voice shattered the silence. "No," he shouted, from the edge of the crowd. His face was gaunt, eyes wild. "Don't let her in. She's not of us." The villagers turned. A few frowned. One woman pulled her daughter closer. Okafor pointed a trembling hand. "I know that walk. I know that veil. That's her. That's..." He couldn't say the name. Couldn't bring it to his lips. The girl turned to face him, but said nothing. Then, one of the fire logs cracked, sending a spray of embers into the sky like red birds escaping. And the spirits arrived. No one saw them, not fully. But the air shifted. The wind stilled. The drums groaned, strings snapping without touch. A thick weight fell over the crowd, familiar and forgotten, like childhood guilt or ancestral breath. A voice, not from the girl, not from Okafor, rose from the flames. "Let her dance." The villagers froze. Okafor stumbled back, whispering curses into his shirt, but no one followed him. The girl stepped into the circle. And danced. At first, it was wrong. Jarring. Her limbs moved in broken circles, like marionette strings pulled by an ancient, shaking hand. Her feet struck the earth too hard. Her spine bent where it should not. Her arms carved symbols into the air. Then the ground cracked. Not loud, not deep. But enough. Enough to silence 100 mouths. With each step, the circle fractured. Fine lines spiderwebbed through the soil beneath her. The ash from the offerings began to swirl. The air smelled of metal and myrrh. Her blood, dark and thin, began to trickle down her calves, unnoticed or ignored. Her legs weren't healed. Not fully. They never would be. But they moved now not by strength, but by something older. Something owed. She turned. And turned again. Faster. Wider. Her veil floated. Her feet pounded. The drums, despite their broken chords, began to hum on their own. A vibration more than sound. And then Okafor screamed. He clawed at his ears, stumbling forward, blood streaming from his nostrils, his eardrums rupturing from a rhythm only he could hear. He fell to his knees, then to his hands, writhing like something caught between life and death. The villagers stepped back. No one touched him. Still, she danced. Her breath came in gasps now. The veil slipped slightly, revealing lips stained red and eyes lit from within, not with light, but with memory. With mourning. With rage. She spun one final time and collapsed to one knee, her hand pressed to the cracked earth. Silence fell. The air pulsed once. Then, recognition. The elder who had always praised her feet took one step forward. "Ebel," he whispered, voice trembling. The name fell like a stone into a deep well. The villagers gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others backed away. But most knelt. Not in apology. Not in pity. In awe. And fear. Because what knelt before them was not just a girl returned. It was vengeance made flesh. It was the silence of generations finally speaking. It was what happens when no one listens, until the broken rise with thunder in their steps and blood in their rhythm. The fire roared. And Okafor, still twitching in the dirt, began to beg. But the gods were already watching someone else. The sun rose heavy the next morning, red and low on the horizon like an open wound. No drums played. No fire crackled. The village was quiet, gathered in a slow, stunned hush around the great baobab tree at the center of the old clearing, where judgment, when it came with roots beneath it. Okafor was already there. Tied by coarse rope soaked in goat's blood and ash, his arms bound behind him, knees pressed to the cracked roots of the ancient tree. He had been dragged there by the same villagers who once crossed the street when he passed. Now they did not look away. Now they watched. The elders stood in a circle around him, dressed in their ceremonial ochre robes, carved staffs held like spears of memory. The oldest, Elder Fola, stepped forward first. "You are bound beneath the baobab," he said, his voice rasping like dry leaves. "Not by punishment. By truth." Okafor spat into the dirt. "Truth? You want truth now? You all watched. You all knew. You ate from my yam pile and danced with your daughters while mine bled in the dark." Murmurs rose. Some faces dropped. Some didn't blink. Another elder stepped forward. "You struck her down like an animal. She danced like one." Okafor roared. "She disobeyed. She mocked me." His voice cracked at the edges. There was no fear in it, only bitterness, the kind that doesn't believe the reckoning will come. But the reckoning had already arrived. And she stepped forward now. Ebel. Barefoot. Veil lifted. Skin still smeared with dried blood. Her eyes glowed faintly beneath the morning light, not bright, but pulsing, like coals that refused to die. The crowd parted for her like tall grass before a blade. She stood just before Okafor. Close enough for him to see the thin white scar running from her jaw to her ear. Close enough for him to smell the ash on her skin. "I warned them," he hissed. "I warned you. You broke me," she said. "You buried me." He looked away. She did not. "I begged. You left me." I screamed. You smiled. The wind shifted. Then came the voices. Not from her throat. Not from her lips. But all around. Whispers. Groans. Cries. The voices of women no longer here, but never truly gone. They rose from the ground, from the air, from within the tree itself. Cracked voices. Childlike voices. Songs that ended in screams. Ebel did not move. "Say your name," she said softly. Okafor's eyes widened. "Say. Your. Name." He opened his mouth, but the wind swallowed it. The baobab tree groaned. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet. The villagers stepped back. A crack split the soil beneath Okafor's knees. Thin at first. Then wider. His bindings held. But the roots beneath him stirred. Unseen fingers, earthen and ancient, wrapped around his calves. He screamed. But not in rage this time. In knowing. In fear. "Stop her," he cried. "She's not right. She's a witch." "No," said Elder Fola, watching with wet eyes. "She is the one you made." The roots pulled. Slowly, but with purpose. His feet disappeared into the earth. He twisted. Cursed. Pleaded. The whispers grew louder. Louder. Then, silence. He was gone. Only the ropes remained, lying flat and damp like shed skin. The villagers stood frozen. Then the baobab groaned again. A ripple moved through its branches. And for the first time in over 200 years, it bloomed. Leaves burst from its limbs, not green, but deep, pulsing red. Like memory. Like warning. Like blood. Ebel never danced again. Not because she couldn't, not because the bones in her legs were still wrong, or because her muscles ached when the moon was full. No, her body was now something beyond injury, beyond healing. She could have danced, if she had wished. But she didn't need to. The dance had already done its work. It had cracked the earth, called the dead, and buried the man who thought her silence was his to command. It had spoken a language older than justice, one that remembered the weight of every hand that had struck a girl in darkness and every voice that had been swallowed in fear. And so, Ebel walked instead. Wherever her feet touched the soil, red flowers bloomed. Not soft roses or harmless petals. These were thick-stemmed blossoms shaped like open mouths and flared like flame, pulsing crimson and veined with gold. They rose in the wake of her steps and did not fade. Even when the wind tore through the village, even when drought came, even when the elders begged the spirits to make them stop. They never stopped. The people learned to step around them. Some learned to kneel beside them. The Whispering Rocks, once feared and avoided, became a place of quiet reverence. No longer called cursed. No longer a myth passed between trembling lips. They had a new name now, Ebel's Stones, and they pulsed at night with a rhythm only certain girls could hear. Young ones. Bruised ones. Silent ones. Girls who had swallowed their own screams for too long. They came alone at first. Then in twos. Then in clusters. They crept through the tall grass barefoot, palms trembling, chins high. They brought no offerings. Only their stories. They would kneel beside the tallest stone, press their foreheads to its side, and whisper. Whisper names. Whisper nights. Whisper blood. And the ground would hum faintly in return, as if listening. As if keeping record. Some said the shrine beneath the earth stirred each time a truth was spoken there. That the bones of long-dead women shifted in their circles of ash. That somewhere deep below, Ebel's spirit still moved, swaying not to drums, but to confession. And when justice was slow to come, it still came. A wife-beater found breathless in his sleep, soil stuffed down his throat. A priest with bloody hands swallowed whole by the roots of the mango tree near the well. A merchant who lost girls on trade routes woke one morning to find every tooth in his mouth turned to glass, and shattered when he bit into yam. The elders stopped asking questions. The flowers kept blooming. Ebel did not return to the village square. She lived at the edge of the forest, near the rocks, near the hum. She wore white always. She spoke little. But her presence was undeniable. She was not a ghost. Nor a queen. Nor quite a woman anymore. She was something else. Children born after the fire festival were told her story, how she crawled where no one stood for her, how she bled and rose, how she shattered and rewrote the earth. Mothers whispered her name during childbirth. Girls traced her steps in the red petals that bloomed after the rains. The village never apologized. But it remembered. Years later, when the oldest elder lay dying, he asked to be carried to Ebel's Stones. He whispered something into the rock. And the wind answered. And then there was silence. And still, Ebel walked. Not often. Not far. But when she did, the path behind her was streaked with red, not of blood, but of blossoms that looked like they wept. And though her legs moved stiffly, though her hands trembled, she held her chin high. For she carried more than her body. She carried those who never rose. She carried the forgotten names. The unfinished songs. She carried them with every step. And they carried her, too. The girls who came to the stones never asked her for words. They only touched her hand. And left, different. Braver. Angrier. More whole. No one knows how long she lived. Some say she vanished into the roots of the baobab. Others say she dances only in dreams, her steps turning pain into flame. But all agree on one truth. That when the wind rises just before the rains, and the flowers bloom where no feet have stepped, she is near. Watching. Listening. Waiting. Because though she never danced again, she never stopped moving. And no injustice goes unheard. He broke her legs, but in doing so, he gave her wings made of bone and thunder.